Welcome to Business Talk here on businesstech.coza. Today we're joined by Richard Mukheibir, who's the CEO of Cash Converters, as the company celebrates a really impressive milestone, 3 decades of serving South Africa, from its roots as a pawn shop, or what those who specialize in business jargon would call a second-hand marketplace, to a full-service retail and financial solutions business. It really has evolved, Cash Converters, and importantly, it stayed relevant. Jeremy Sampson of Brand Finance always reminds me on my radio show, Michael, brands have got to remain relevant. So I'm really excited, Richard, just to talk about this journey and how you've built really what is an iconic brand in South Africa. Welcome to the show.
Michael, thank you very much and appreciate the opportunity, and thank you to the Business Talk listeners.
Now, Cash Converters really has become a trusted brand in South Africa over the last 30 years. And I think that's so important in the space in which you deal with, secondhand, pre-loved, pre-owned goods and services. What do you think has been the key to staying relevant in such a dynamic and competitive market?
So, Michael, thank you. Yes, it is dynamic, it is competitive, it is ever changing. And I think that's possibly one of the secrets of our success is our adaptability. So you may be aware that we brought the business in 1994. We were effectively just buyers and sellers of second-hand household goods at that point in time. And we purposely stayed away from introducing the money lending products because we felt that the legislation wasn't in fact suitable at the time. That changed, in fact, in 2007 when the National Credit Act came in, and it incorporated all the money lending products all the way from 20-year bonds to 30-day loans. And that gave us a legal framework around which we could introduce those products. So the first product that we introduced was, in fact, pawnbroking in 2007. We followed that up just after 2010 with the unsecured money lending products. And we've effectively adapted through the process. In fact, during COVID, we launched our first digital website and web shop, and that has been very successful. It'll account for probably just north of 10% of our total turnover these days by the end of this year. And that combination between bricks and mortar and digital has been a very interesting journey. The synergy has been fantastic. Obviously, also through that period of 30 years, we've had 3 changes in corporate identity, so we've kept up to pace with that. And the combination of that, the adaptability of our business model, I think, has kept us relevant. Always been focusing on servicing the customer and effectively providing them with as many opportunities to access cash from us as possible.
And clearly, through that process, you've had to wait for the regulatory and legislative environment, to your earlier point, to be enabling, and we did see that with the NCA. But what was the further strategic thinking behind adding all of these new services? I mean, was it just in response to consumer demand? Are there any other market forces at play that prompted that shift?
So I think to a large degree, it's driven from the insights we get from our colleagues around the world. You clearly are aware that this is an international franchise based in Perth in Western Australia. We have the license for it in Southern Africa. We operate as a brand across 22 different countries around the world. And in fact, as part of our 30-year celebrations just concluded last week, we had the leadership of Cash Converters around the world in the room for a week, where we share information, where we effectively pick out the nub of what's going on around the world and then customize that to implement in South Africa. But the overall thinking process and why we exist is to help our customers get on with their life. And how we do that is provide them with access to cash. What we do is we buy, we sell, and we lend money. And within that overall explanation of the strategy, it's to provide the consumer with as many alternatives as possible to access cash in a quick, convenient, safe manner.
Just like a business needs to focus on cash flow, I think consumers, individuals need to manage their own personal cash flow. And that's why when you look at the various options, sometimes going to a bank, it might not be fast enough. It might not be attractive enough. There are all kinds of reasons that you would choose to go the Cash Converters route. And I hope, much like our Springboks, we are able to teach the Aussies a few things when it comes to running a Cash Converters. I know you've been running a series of articles on Business Tech about the value of owning a Cash Converters franchise. What sets Cash Converters apart as a franchise opportunity, particularly in today's economy?
I think a number of things. If we take the business model of Cash Converters and put it aside, clearly it's a very strong business model. It supplies access to cash to a vast majority of South Africans, and that demand is ever increasing. But if we put that aside for a moment, I think what separates us, first of all, is our high level of support to our franchisees. We are a symbiotic relationship between franchisor and franchisee, and we very clearly understand that relationship. The more successful the franchisee is, the more successful the franchisor will be, and as a consequence, the more successful the brand will be. So we really focus on providing a significant level of support to our franchisees and guiding them in the context of our proven business model. So I'd say that's first. Second, the business model in South Africa, as it's adapted over time. COVID as an example. I mean, we did a massive pivot over COVID. What has come out of that has been very successful, so we're happy with that. I alluded to it earlier, the international brand. We effectively have upwards of 20 countries around the world doing research and development for us, not on our account or our franchisees' account. So that really, the IP that we gain from that is significant. And then probably the last thing, our longevity. You know, this is a franchise that can materially change the family's balance sheet over generations or intergeneral changes of balance sheet. We've got, now that we've been around for 30 odd years, we've got many families that are starting to hand over to the kids. And over the period of time, they've significantly improved the family balance sheet. Now, really hoping that the next generation takes it from there and builds from there.
Yeah, as long as they know that old saying, from clogs to clogs in 3 generations, you've got to be very mindful when it comes to family businesses. Are you allowed to mention names when we talk about examples of how owning a Cash Converters franchise has become a source of generational wealth for franchisees?
Well, I think let me just talk to stores, I suppose, for examples. We started out the business in the Western Cape. I'm actually a Cape Townian living up in Johannesburg. And so two of the examples in the Western Cape I can identify for you now is our store and operator in Wynberg, who's literally the first franchisee I signed 30 years ago. He's in fact now in his 70s and is finally decided to sell the business, and he's in fact selling it to a franchisee who has numerous stores in the group, who's been with us also for 20 odd years plus, and he's bringing family in to run that store for him. Another store, combination of stores, is Brackenfell Hyper and Cape Gate. That is an example where, in fact, the next generation are taking over. And full disclosure, that's actually my sister and brother-in-law, and my nephew and niece are taking those 2 stores over the next couple of years. Then we've got a store out in the east of Pretoria, in Moraletta area, where the father has effectively retired and the son's taken over, and he's doing a fantastic job of it. So yes, I'm sure that there are other examples of brands like this in the country, but this is pretty special for us, and gives that continuity and builds on the foundation that the previous generation had built.
And what I like about franchising, I mean, I know it's not for everyone, but to your earlier points, you get to scratch that entrepreneurial itch and really exercise the desire, if you've got one, to be an entrepreneur, but with a lot of support, with a lot of IP that comes with it, the brand, the marketing. And I think it's a really good model for South Africa in the context of building long-term economic stability in a country with low entrepreneurial rates or rates of entrepreneurship. For those who are interested in becoming a franchisee, what are the key requirements? Maybe you could just take us through the application and approval process, as well as some of the financial commitments involved.
Okie dokie. So just before I dive into there, you touched a topic I think is really important in South Africa. We will only succeed by growing our economy. And franchising as a business model, I believe, is perfect to do exactly that. There are many very successful South Africans out there who may not have the skills to own and operate a business from scratch because they simply don't. Franchising brings with it a proven business model and a successful brand. And those guardrails then are provided to the franchisee to use their input, their energy, their passion, their desire, and clearly their cash to build a successful business going forward. So I'm passionate about helping that whole process, particularly obviously within Cash Converters, but from a franchise model per se around the country. How do you get involved in Cash Converters? Probably the easiest way is just hop onto our website, cashconverters.co.za. It's an application process there. Our team will then contact the individual, and really the type of person we're looking for is somebody who is what we would refer to as value set compliant. So how we verbalize that in the context of our values is passion, professionalism, integrity, respect, and collaboration are 5 values that are really important to us. We would begin a journey with an individual that would include myself and our national marketing manager and sales manager, really interviewing the individual potential franchisee. And what we try to do is we try to match that individual and their family's objectives with our business model and our objective to see if there's an alignment. And if there is that alignment, we can move forward. So part of that process would include going into some of our stores, spending some time there, getting a sense of whether this business model fits the individual's profile, because that's critically important. Not everybody is going to enjoy operating a Cash Converter store, and those guys that do stay with us for decades, as you've already seen. To talk to some money, around about 4.5 million rand setup cost for a Cash Converter store at a very high level. Just over 500,000 of that will come back at some point in time in the context of the refund from SARS for input VAT. Then you've got 2.5 million rand, which is going to set up the store. So fixtures, fittings, build out, computers, signage, all that type of stuff. And the balance of the 1.5 is working capital to start your business off. And then generally speaking, from a franchise point of view, if you talk to the Franchise Association, they'd suggest you don't indebt the business by more than 50%. So you effectively need to pitch up with, I think it is 2.25 million in cash. We can help put business plans and loan requests together to the 5 large banks in the country. We're accredited franchisors with every one of them. So that's generally the process. And that from the time we meet to the time we open the store, anywhere between 6 and 12 months. It's quite a long process, but it's important that we get the right franchisee funded correctly with the right site in place, and then we get a result where we effectively build wealth for our franchisees over a long period of time.
Yeah, that's the interesting approach here is that, it's not often just financial, it's the non-financial factors to ensure that you've got that right sort of values-based cultural fit before you then go into the funding, which can also be, I think, quite daunting for many people. You mentioned this relationship with the banks. How does that help de-risk the process for potential investors?
So the first step in that process is the banks actually understand our business model. So that's extremely helpful in the first step. They understand how to structure loans in the context of our particular business model. So that is helpful. And they're all members of the Franchise Association of South Africa. So in that context, they will generally not over-indebt or put too much debt into a business, because cash flow obviously is really important, particularly at the front end when one's opening a store. So yes, we have spent a long time over the years working with the banks. They understand us. We're, like I say, a recognized franchisor in their context.
Looking ahead, the pivot through COVID, I think, just showed how much you can innovate and take advantage of trends online, for example. What exciting plans or innovations do you have in store for Cash Converters in South Africa? Is there anything that you can reveal to us here, or is it everything hush-hush and under NDAs?
No, we can talk at a high level on many issues. In fact, just to contextualize, probably going back 10 years ago, we had no IT resource in our organization at all. It was a traditional franchise operation where we bought third-party IT in. We realized at that point in time that our business is so unique, we couldn't buy a package off the shelf. So over the last decade, we've effectively in-housed that. And of the 110 or 120 people at head office now, 1/4 of them are IT. and close to 15 of them are dedicated to effectively developing new applications and new functionality for us. So shortly we'll be getting on top of our web shop an auction functionality in that web shop, which we think is going to be really, really cool. We're in the process of replacing our legacy unsecured money lending application with a brand new one. It's in pilot in 4 stores around the country, and that will roll out in scale during the course of next year, which will also include a 2 and 3 months product to that as well. So there are 4 new products coming. And in context of our secured money lending, we're going to do 2 fundamental things there. We're going to increase our maximum loan size to 100,000 Rand from 20, and we're going to increase the term also from 1 to 3 months. Right up until now, we've effectively been business to consumer. We will also then, secondly, create functionality where we can be lending to small businesses. What we found over the post-COVID situation is that many small businesses, whether I build walls or weld gates or whatever, need short-term cash flow to pay salaries, let's say on a Friday, et cetera, while waiting for the customer to pay them. And there's a big demand from that network that we think we could satisfy and provide, again, improved service levels to our customers and effectively give access to cash to small businesses as well.
Wow, and I can really see that becoming a growth engine. To your point, having done some building at home recently, the example of the kind of Bucky builder, and the invoice was still outstanding. He couldn't pay. He was now asking me for a loan. And I think there's so many stories like that out there. Richard, certainly look forward to seeing what's next for the brand as it continues to grow. Great pleasure chatting to you here on Business Talk.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you for the opportunity. Bye now.